But first.
It was considered that the group, subject of our attention, posed an unacceptable risk. Their behaviour, whilst under that surveillance, led us to believe that if they were to commit any act, we would not be able to prevent that. 13 search warrants have been executed across south-western Sydney.
As part of our JCTT investigation into the alleged Wakely stabbing, we identified links between the alleged offender and a network of associates and peers who we believe shared a similar violent extremist ideology.
Well, that was what we heard this afternoon around 4 o'clock, the shock of those counter-terrorism raids involving 400 police. Now, in my experience, that is a massive raid onslaught. 7 confirmed arrests so far. A further 5 individuals were told assisting police with inquiries. Well, out of that, there's quite a few different issues at play in this whole messy debate that's now erupted over the role of big tech and social media, de-radicalisation and terrorism risk, and what might be done to curb online crime and abuse. First, there's a question of what should or should not be available online and whether the removal of violent images, such as the stabbing of Bishop Emmanuel, infringes the fundamental right to free speech. Second, there's the question of what should happen to the mass of online hate speech that could have acted as a spur to the kind of Islamist fanaticism which is alleged to have driven Bishop Emmanuel's attacker. Plus all the other sordid, sexualised and depraved muck that gets circulated regularly online. Third, there's the growing question of access to social media, with calls today that children be banned from using it. And fourth, there's the issue of encrypted messaging services run by big tech and used by terror groups, crime gangs, pedophile rings that police and security agencies say they often need big tech's cooperation in order to access. Not to mention here all the politicians and staff who use them too to get around freedom of information rules. This is what the ASIO chief was talking about at the press club today when he said that encryption is building a safe room for terrorists and spies, a secure place where they can plot and plan.
Today, I'm urging the tech companies to work with us to resolve this challenge. I'm not asking for more resources. I'm not asking the government to do anything. I'm asking for the tech companies to do more. In effect, unaccountable encryption is like building a safe room for terrorists and spies, a secure place where they can plot and plan.
All of this now seems to have been swept up in the moral panic over the role of big tech and AI, with loud calls from both sides of politics for new powers to enable officials to act as editors-in-chief of what you can see and read online. Now, as usual, when confronted with demands for urgent action on a range of complex issues, I've always thought it's best to go back to first principles. Of course, the police should have access to the messages sent by criminals, given that encryption technology seems to have run ahead of our spooks' ability to access it. And if big tech won't cooperate here, well, laws should make them. As the ASIO head said today, I'm asking for companies to do more to give effect to the existing powers and uphold existing laws. And if they don't, he said, well, that's a conversation he'll have with government. But the extent to which underage children should have access to devices and what those devices should be able to do, well, really, that's up to parents. And responsible parents should resist the peer pressure to allow young people to do too much too soon. After all, most devices in a child's hands are paid for by parents. And if kids won't play ball, then the adult needs to act like a parent, not the kid's best friend, and take measures like turning off the family Wi-Fi. I've personally seen that done, or cancelling their phone subscription. But those issues aside, for me, the really big issue today is not just the violent imagery posted online, but the hate speech that's helping to radicalise people, particularly young people, young boys, to acts of violence and terrorism. I mean, why should the vision of the knifing of Bishop Emmanuel be banned, but not the hate speech that allegedly motivated it? And we know even before these arrests today, this growth in the radicalisation of young boys is a significant concern of law enforcement. Sadly, numbers are yet again on the rise.
In terms of minors, We've been talking for a long time, unfortunately. There's been a growing number of minors in our counterterrorism caseload. That did peak a couple of years ago to 50% of our priority counterterrorism caseload. It dropped off again for a while, but it's picked up again.
If you watch this show, you will know I have talked about this for months. Confirmed there by the ASIO chief today. And my worry is that any bureaucratic regime set up to deal with this will be a selective enforcement agency that worries about some hate speech, but not all. Now, I'm sure that the ASIO boss was right when he told the National Press Club today that there's a range of violent material online. Sunni Muslim extremists, Christian extremist material, neo-Nazi extremist material. I'd prefer that none of it be there, but can't help noting that the actual terror attacks mostly seem linked to Islamist fanaticism. And I worry that all the official outrage from the E-Safety Commissioner and others is directed solely at the violent imagery of a Muslim allegedly attacking a Christian bishop. By all means, take that down. Although it is noteworthy, as I said, Bishop Emmanuel himself says today via a statement tendered in court that he is strongly of the view that it should remain online. What we certainly should not have, though, is draconian action against some online content, yet kid-glove treatment of others. There was footage the other day of riot police arresting people who'd vandalised police cars outside Bishop Emmanuel's church. Fair enough. But so far, there's been no footage of the raids reportedly carried out across Sydney today against people allegedly linked with the attack on the bishop. Again, this looks like a double standard. And that's my worry about the Prime Minister's attempt to reheat his discredited misinformation and disinformation legislation that we now seem rushing towards. It could all end up being Orwellian overreach, targeting some allegedly extreme views, but not all. I think the coalition needs to be very careful here, lest it end up giving cover to something quite draconian, designed by stealth to debilitate free speech, particularly the speech of those on the right. Again, rather than new laws to deal with the excesses of the online Wild West, what about stopping it from being a Wild West in the first place? By declaring that X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all of them are not platforms but publishers, and therefore legally liable for whatever they allow to be posted. After all, this is how they make their money. And by ensuring that no one can create an online identity that's not linked to a real identifiable person who can be held responsible. Creating, if you like, responsible online citizenship strikes me as so much smarter than asking some overwhelmed and partial official to clean up the mess after the horse has bolted or after the terror attack has occurred.